I love tokusatsu and I love anime. And when the two are together, you usually get the anime only fans not even noticing and the Choku fans saying it's the greatest anime of all time. Except that last one seems like that doesn't really happen that much. Because usually, because it's a tokusatsu character, fans will watch it. But because it's not in the purest form of tokusatsu, and it's unfortunately contaminated with the disease-filled medium that is anime, it's not worthy of being part of the series' legacy, or it's just bad, and fans won't open up to it. For example, Godzilla Singular Point was more of a science fiction anime with monsters in it instead of being a monster mash centered around an X-Men and Matrix plot. But they don't like that either. And then there are those who just like good shows and good movies, whether it's good because of the quality and the story, or if it's good because of the fun. Back in 2017, Toho Animation and Polygon Pictures began their Godzilla trilogy of anime films on Netflix. And they were not received well. And even though some like them, they are usually involved in the same sentence as words like egregious, boredom fest, simply trash, and so on. But we have to look at it. Is this a case of people not liking a change of style, or are they actually just bad? As a trilogy, the story is a very new take on the pop culture icon. In this version, the Earth has continued on for a long time into the future, and when Godzilla showed up to wreak havoc on the world, so did a multitude of other monsters. Alien species known as the Bilosaludo and the Ixif have also fallen to near extinction. They have come to lend their helping hand to humanity using their developed technology to fight Godzilla, Mechagodzilla. Only it never activated properly and resulted in a disaster. With no other option, eventually the remnants of humanity, the Bilosaludo, the Ixif, retreat into space. Because of the time difference in hyperspace and science and all that stuff, it's been, about 10-ish years, I believe, for the people aboard. But for Earth, it's been nearly 20,000 or over 20,000, one of the two. That's the 5-minute prologue of the movie. The rest of the story picks up when the ship arrives close to Earth. A bunch of other stuff happens, and I'm not going to go into it, but now you've got the initial setup. From there, they have a bunch of meetings, talk, that we're going back to Earth, and we're checking out the surface, see if Godzilla's still there, or see if it's habitable again. Alright, so the first movie. It takes them about 30 minutes until they actually go to Earth, which I'd say only part of it that we're watching is actually interesting. And then they go back to Earth and find everything has evolved 20,000 years into the future. It's crazy. Plant life has grown back everywhere and completely changed the environment. Monsters and creatures are in their next stages of evolution. And Godzilla is ginormous. The movie is about an hour and 40 minutes, I believe, or an hour and a half. And it takes about an hour of that until Godzilla actually shows up. Other than the prologue, obviously. And once they defeat Godzilla, it actually just awakens a bigger Godzilla. Still the biggest incarnation of the kaiju in movie history. It's a really interesting take on the premise, and the beginning is actually pretty good, and when Godzilla shows up, it gets pretty exciting. And it tackles similar meanings of humanity versus nature, classic Godzilla. But the movie is just a lot of walking or going around in their equipment on the surface, saying, whoa, look at that thing's evolved. Oh my gosh, another evolved thing. That's crazy. It ends up not being a terrible movie, but other than the first 10 minutes and like the last 30 minutes, there isn't much it's offering outside of being an interesting idea. I didn't mention the first movie's called Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, or Monster Planet, depending on your translation. And the second one is Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle. Interesting enough, for being the longest of the three, the least amount of significant things happen in this movie. And yes, Godzilla doesn't show up to add excitement to the boring plot until there's about 30 minutes left. So the story is they find out people have survived and have been hiding underground and have evolved into the atmosphere since then. And that's all at just the beginning of the movie. And it's very slowly revealed that the Bilosaludo have been planning to use Mechagodzilla against Godzilla, as in be consumed by the material that makes up Mechagodzilla City and evolve to be invincible. Yes, he's a city, not a mech. Which part of me goes, oh cool, let's see how this different interpretation goes. But then the other part of me also realizes how boring it ends up being and nothing really happens. I will say the last 10 minutes are actually really, really good. And the ending was so good that immediately after I watched it, I went, oh yes, this is better than the first one. 100%. And then I thought for 20 minutes and realized and remembered how everything in the first hour and a half of the movie actually was. So overall, it's not great. And honestly, it's not even good. But oh well. The third movie is the finale. This is where the first two movies were leading towards the whole time. And thank goodness that they figured out what they were doing, because there's plenty of great twists and they learned their lesson from having pointless dialogue during pointless scenes in the last two. Instead, they just have this setup and plenty of significant dialogue throughout. The majority of the movie is just the final battle, both for Godzilla and for Toho. And it's not only written well, but it manages to be thrilling from start to finish. After all, this is not only a climax for one movie, but a climax for three. And it feels like that we finally got to the meaning and purpose of the story. Humanity's tendency to be easily swayed by those in power during dire times, seemingly giving up on critical thinking and following leaders blindlessly, as well as how the heart can be corrupted by vengeance, hatred, and obsession, and how we seem to be incapable of letting things go, even if that only hurts us in the end. This movie's take on Ghidorah follows the same style of being completely different than anything else in the franchise. In this one, it all works amazingly. There's some incredible sequences, and the climax being things that actually happen physically as well as being completely psychological is done incredibly well. The ending serves as a beautiful ending to a trilogy that was mostly mediocre, which is interesting that they managed to pull that off. As a whole, all right, what the three do all well, I think, is the animation. I'm not against 3D anime. It's just another medium, right? But I am aware that most of it looks less than adequate, and they're still figuring it out. I get it. But the animation actually looks pretty good in these movies. The voice acting is also incredibly well done. Mamoru Miyano plays Haruo especially well. You may know him as small roles, such as Light from the little series called Death Note, Okabe from Steins Gate, and of course Ultraman Zero in the Ultraman series. Across the entire trilogy, the music is also really good, and it just reaches another level entirely in the final film, especially during the last scene. What an incredible piece of music. The end credit songs are also really, really good. All in all, this trilogy has a pretty good story, just executed underwhelmingly, until the final movie, that is. Even if the first two movies are ranged from just okay to kind of bad, this final movie made it all worth it. So, are they as bad as everybody says? No. People hate on these movies. They don't deserve that much hate. But are they the worst Godzilla movies? Also, no. The first two aren't super high on the list, I will be honest. But watching them as a trilogy, they eventually deliver. As a Godzilla or anime fan, should you watch them? Well, if you want to, then yeah, sure, go for it. You don't need to just because the third movie's so good. I'd still recommend this trilogy to Godzilla fans specifically. Just know that you have to get through some moments, some low moments before you get to that quality in the third one. But I've already rewatched them, and I'll rewatch them again, partly because I'll likely watch every Godzilla movie again, but also because, like I said, man, that third one's so good. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, and if you have not already, subscribe. Also comment down below, what did you think of the Godzilla anime movies? Or do you not even care about them, which is totally fair. Thanks for your time. I've been Shin Glassman, and I'll see you in the next one.